Today we're looking at 10 potential breakout wide receivers to help you with your drafts this weekend, to help you with the waiver wire, to help you navigate the waters, to really maximize your upside, to really find those players in the rough, to help your team to turn and burn, to get you ready for the waiver wire, to get you thinking for what's about to happen once season starts. We're covering everything. A little bit for your draft this weekend, a little bit for the waiver wire to help you build your teams. Before we start looking at these players, you have to click that subscribe button right now. Stop missing out because I'm going to help you build your teams, find players off the waiver wire, talk about these players, do deep dives all season long and in the off season. It's going to help you out. You need to hit that button. Stop missing out. And we're going to look at these 10 wide receivers. And this last one's got a lot of upside that's fun off the waiver wire that you're going to need to know. So you're going to need to watch the whole video to find out who he is. But the first one's George Pickens here. Wide receiver 32 in ADP. Been balling out all preseason. He's been balling out in training camp. Had one of the best catches in all of training camp. We've went over the clips multiple times. And he's been making highlight after highlight. Whenever he's on the field, he makes a highlight. And that's just part of his game. He's the highlight reel. George Pickens is the highlight reel. He was like that in Georgia. He's like that now. Does that equate to fantasy points? Well, one thing when we look at this team in preseason, the offense has been looking very good, very potent, very efficient. They're moving the ball in the air. Pickens gets a lot of upside. And with Kenny Pickett under center, he's averaging 11.36 fantasy points per game. And that's with Kenny Pickett as a rookie developing. So we might see this increase a bit. And that's with Pickens being a rookie developing. And now we're into both these players' second years of their career. And we might see more upside than that. Prior to that, 4.7 fantasy points per game before Kenny Pickett got the keys to the car. So really, we might see Pickens blow up here, especially if this offense is more efficient. And at the price tag you're getting him, wide receiver 32 in those middle rounds. We got a lot of dice rolls in the middle rounds with these wide receivers. We talked about almost all of them in these videos. We cover like 10 players a day. We've talked about all of them. Pick your poison, pick the one you like, but I got to give you the information on all of them so you can make your decision. George Pickens is a good player. We can't argue against that. He's a fantastic athlete. Fantastic at the catch point, makes plays happens, and has a ton of upside. Next, we're talking about Gabe Davis, wide receiver 36. And if you want to talk about upside, let's talk about Mr. Boom Bust, because any week, he can really flatline on you. But any other week, he can really win your week for you because he can just hit fantasy points at a high level, which is something you don't see from many wide receivers in this game because he's in the Bills offense. He gets a lot of deep targets, and that allows him to connect and hit his potential upside. 90 air yards a game, and he's running a lot of deep routes. And with that being said, if he hits on one or two targets, or even one, you can get a spike week out of him. You got to just remember there's going to be bust weeks here. You got to remember he played with an injury last year for a bit, slowed him down. Gabe Davis, wide receiver 36, though. Priced accordingly this year. The value kind of went up a bit last year. Now we're priced right where a boom bust player should go at. And you're looking at him in drafts wondering, what should I do? You got a guy on the Bills offense. You just play the matchups with him and just hope for the best. DFS, he's going to be a guy you're messing around with week in and week out. Just see if you can really nail something in some of these DFS stacks. Next, we're talking about Brandon Cooks, wide receiver 42 in ADP. With the Cowboys this year, he's been productive wherever he's been because he's a nuanced wide receiver, very talented, can also stretch the field. He's played with good quarterbacks. He's played with bad quarterbacks. Now we're with Dak Prescott. They really did not add any running backs of consequence to challenge Tony Pollard. So if something happens to him, this might be a pass-heavy team. They may go YOLO in the passing game. And this dude gets air yards. We like wide receivers who get air yards. We're talking about a wide receiver here that might push for 80 air yards a game. I wouldn't guess 100 air yards a game because he's got some competition with Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb. But with the deep routes, I imagine they're going to have him run because he still has some speed, even though he's been in the league since 2014. He will get some deep targets. We connect on one of those in any given week, we're talking about a spike week. We're also going to have touchdown weeks. I look for him to have an okay season. Some wide receiver 2 weeks here and there, some flatline weeks here and there. Nothing tremendous, but all in all, when you're looking at the back end of your wide receiver roster, if you're wanting a veteran with some stability, with a little bit of upside, maybe that's Brandon Cooks for you. Next is Elijah Moore. We talk about him a lot. Wide receiver 44. And really, he's been looking good with the Browns. They're moving him around the offense. We saw that in minicamp. We saw that in training camp. That's why we go over the clips every single day. And we try to guess what these roles are going to be for these new players, how these players are coming back from injuries. That's another reason why you need to hit that subscribe button right now. Because we deep dive the camps from rookie minicamp to training camp, off-season workouts, try to get a gauge on these players. Sometimes we're right, sometimes we're wrong, but we got to do what we can do with this information. But they're moving him around in the offense. Sometimes he's taking handoffs, sometimes he's in the slot, sometimes they're running him deep, sometimes he's on the outside. They want him everywhere as a weapon, which means they're going to want to give him opportunity, and he's got a lot of upside here. Deshaun Watson, a full year with the offense now. How's that going to look? We might see an uptick in the passing game. I want to bet on that. I want at least a piece of this Browns offense. We got a talented wide receiver here. Very productive out of college. Did well as a rookie with the Jets. Last year went to hell because it's the Jets. Wide receiver 44. Wide receiver 44 is cheap. He's cheap still, and is a good asset to get. Next, Tyler Boyd, wide receiver 52. He's one of the few true handcuffs at wide receiver. I'm making an emphasis if I have Chase or Higgins on my team to try and get him, because if one of those guys are out, he has the potential to give you some spike weeks. Also alone, he has the potential to give you some production. It's very off and on. It's very boom bust. He might be point-wise, not actually comparison-wise, comparison to like a Gabe Davis, because look at the production metrics here in the last couple years. You got the spike weeks and you got massive down weeks, and that's what you're getting out of him. But really what you're drafting here, wide receiver 52. So you're talking like a wide receiver 5 to wide receiver 6 back end of your roster. Sometimes Chase or Higgins. You got a guy that's going to give you good production, and you're banking on that. And he's not going to hit the waiver wire on your team unless something happens. So this is a player you need to draft if you want him. And he's a player that could be steady for you if something happens to Chase or Higgins. That's really what you're looking at. But also, if you're in a pinch and you need to start a wide receiver, he has the potential to score for you, because sometimes they're in the red zone. They just toss it to him while he's in the slot. He gets that touchdown. Or he gets a couple extra targets because they got Chase and Higgins locked down a little bit on a couple drives. Boyd gets a couple targets on this drive, a couple targets on that drive. Next thing you know, got a decent week for you. Next, we're looking at Jameson Williams, wide receiver 56 ADP. And the reason why I'm talking about him today, because I haven't talked about him much this offseason outside the clips from training camp, and I just thought about that, and we're talking about him today. He's got elite speed. He's suspended. Jared Goff slings the rock. And Jared Goff's ADOT was a little bit low last year, but one thing, DJ Chark was hurt. Williams was out most of the year. We did not have many deep ball specialists on this team to really go YOLO with it. I think they do want to go YOLO with it when they throw it deep. That's why they drafted Jameson Williams to stretch the field. That will help Amon-Ra St. Brown. The thing about this is for redraft, setting lineups, this might be a head scratcher. This might hurt your brain from a week-to-week standpoint once he's back, because you're really going to have to play the matchups. You're going to really have to hope things go right. On the outside, looking in from that, is when he does reel in a couple of those catches in a week, that could be nuclear. That could be huge. I like him best for DFS. I know when he comes back, he's probably going to be very cheap, and you can probably make some nice stacks with that. And maybe in those tournaments, you just make a few extra lineups. And I'm talking about max entry tournaments where you can just really go ham with it. But Jameson Williams is going to have some value in fantasy, probably mostly for DFS for sure. For redraft, you're going to like him if you like chasing air yards and hoping for the best. If you need to plug in a wide receiver, close your eyes, cross those fingers, and hope for the best. And that's what you're looking at him. But that elite speed. He does have some talent. He can create separation. We're going to have to watch what's going on when he comes back. It's going to be interesting to watch. But Jameson Williams does have some talent. You shouldn't forget him. And then you're looking at the price tag at wide receiver 56. Dirt cheap. Dirt cheap. So if he falls on your face, falls on his face, you're going to be okay because you can really maneuver your roster around. You might be even on waivers within a few weeks because people have to really manage their teams and pick up players to fill some gaps. So maybe that can happen for you too. You can catch them even cheaper. Next, Marvin Mims, wide receiver, 59 at ADP. If you're looking for a deep ball guy, you're looking for a guy that can give you some spike weeks. This is a guy that could do it. Very productive coming out of college. Broke out at age 19 at Oklahoma. Finished the year strong last year. Jerry Jeudy's out with an injury. And we saw it in this last preseason game, that 50-yard catch. That's a 6-point play right there. So if he reels in a couple more catches, you're talking about double-digit fantasy performance at a wide receiver 60 price points. And he has that upside. Has a very good profile coming out of college. Good athleticism, 4.3 speed. Good highlight package, good tape. Tape and highlight package are different. Tape is play to play. Highlight package is the upside plays. All of it checks the boxes. The production checks the boxes. The draft capital is drafted in the second round. That checks the boxes. So there's a lot of good things going on with Marvin Mims. The Broncos invested in an offensive line. We got Sean Payton there now. Russell Wilson might cook a little bit better this year. Might have some edible meals from week to week. We're going to have to see about that. But there's some upside here. He's a good player. He's a good potential breakout candidate. You need to know who he is. Next is Rashee Rice, wide receiver, 61 in ADP. Patrick Mahomes. That's all you really need to know. You really need to know about this offense. It's so explosive. And these young wide receivers have been battling it out all through camp. And you want every single one of them, but you can't roster all of them. Pick your poison or diversify. But you need some shares. Second round pick, good ball skills, productive last year, 1,300 receiving yards for SMU. One of the better highlight packages of some of the wide receivers in this class due to his ball skills, due to some of that size and length on him. He's a candidate to really surprise us this year. And I wouldn't be surprised if these wide receivers just go off and on. Patrick Mahomes wields it and deals it. You don't know which wide receiver you're going to want to start. But one might take over, one might not. But if that's the case, you're going to want a couple lottery tickets. Next is Tank Dell, wide receiver 75 in ADP. CJ Stroud throwing yellow balls. The way we've seen Stroud, it's been off and on this preseason. So we may have some game scripts here where we're in the back half of the game and they're slinging it. They're letting Stroud develop. They're allowing him the opportunity to really get those reps in, make the bad plays, make the good plays. That volume might play in the hands of Dell, might have some spike weeks, might be a guy who exceeds expectations, might be on your waiver wire. Keep an eye on him. The game scripts is what's going to be very dependent on his production. If the game scripts do that, if they're really going YOLO in the back half of games, Tank Dell might be getting some opportunities, might be a sneaky player off the waiver wire for you, or in drafts, or off your bench, or however your league or your team is structured. But you need to pay attention to that because he's a good player, very nuanced route runner, very quick. He's a separator, and he looks like a player that is really going to carve out a role no matter what. And last and not least, it's Justin Ross, wide receiver 79, prolific wide receiver out of Clemson. And we're talking about an underdog story because he had that injury, then came back to Clemson that last year. Still was productive from a market share standpoint, over a 20% share of Clemson's passing production, but the offense was dead nuts. It was dead in the water then. Then he comes out for the draft, falls out of the draft. The Chiefs snatch him up, and next thing you know, he's hurt again. He comes back this year. We're balling out. Looks like we're coming back to the old Justin Ross. Looks like we're getting there because he's balling out in the preseason games. He's balling out in training camp. He's looking good. Looks like he can be productive. This might be a waiver wire dandy or a guy you want to draft with one of your last picks and hope for the best. He's a player you really want to keep an eye out. You also want Chiefs wide receivers. You also want a young guy from this offense. If you want to look for upside, if you want a lottery ticket that you can turn and burn, a Chiefs wide receiver, one of these young guys, even Richie James, one of these young guys you want to look at. But those are 10 wide receivers we're looking at that could break out, that has some upside, that you really want to look at in your drafts, off the waiver wire or on your team or try and trade, whatever is your scenario right now. A lot of you guys are done with drafts. A lot of you guys have some drafts over the holiday weekend, so I'm trying to mix it up. We talk about different players every day, and I try to tell you the good and the bad of each of them, try to throw you some stats, try to help you out make your decisions when you're in your drafts, making your trades and everything else. Going to have a lot for you this season. Excited for that, but make sure you hit that subscribe button because you don't want to miss out on it either. I want to thank you for watching. Catch you on the next video.